we see this and we automatically freak out. Oh no, not fractions. I hate fractions. But they're really not that. So I have 4/5 in equals 6/7. What that means is 4/5 is being multiplied by in. So to solve that, we use the inverse operation, which is division. Oh no, division, fractions, ah! So let's review dividing fractions. We've talked about that dividing fractions, you're really multiplying by the reciprocal. No, we're not going to do any of those poems to memorize it. We're going to talk about that you're multiplying by the reciprocal. So if I said 4/5 divided by 4/5, that really means 4/5, and remember we said same, multiply, reciprocal. Okay, so that's 4/5 times, that becomes multiply, and then the reciprocal, which would be 5/4. Those are two equivalent expressions, okay? They mean the same thing. So what is 4/5 times 5/4? That is 20/20. What's that equal? 1. So let's go back. I want to have 1 in because that equals in. So to do that, I need to multiply by the reciprocal because dividing is the same as multiplying by the reciprocal. So that means I'm going to multiply both sides by 5/4. Remember, I have to do it to both sides. Forgot to write that little line down the equal. So I know that 5/4 times 5/4 times 4/5, top times top, bottom times bottom, that's going to be 20/20, which is just 1. So I would end up with 1 in, but we know that because of the identity property, that's just in. So I'm going to be left with in equals, and now I'm going to come over here and I'm going to multiply 6/7 times 5/4. I'm going to look, see if there's anything that can cross cancel, and I know that 6 and 4 have a common factor of 2. So 6 divided by 2 is 3, and 4 divided by 2 is 2. So that would make that 15/14. So n equals 15/14. That's improper, but I know that is a mixed number. That would be 1 and 1/14. Okay, to check to see if I'm right, I would plug that back in to the equation. I said that 4/5 times n equals 6/7. For n, I got 1 and 1/14. Well, to multiply, I have to turn it into an improper fraction. So I'm going to go ahead and use that 15/14. Now I'm going to look, is there anything that I can cross cancel? Well, 15 and 5 both can be divided by 5, so that would be 1 and 3. And then 4 and 14 are both even, so I can divide them both by 2, so that becomes 2 and 7. So now top times top, bottom times bottom, 2 times 3 is 6, and 1 times 7 is 7. So that's correct. So that means I was correct. N is 15/14, which is 1 and 1/14. Okay, now I have 6/7 G equals 3. So again, anytime I see a fraction coefficient, remember a coefficient is that number in front of the variable that's being multiplied by the variable, I know that I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal. So that means I'm going to multiply by 7/6. I'm going to do that to both sides. Okay? And I know when I do that, that cancels out because that becomes 1. So that's G equals. And now I need to actually multiply it over here. How do I multiply a whole number in a fraction? I have to turn them both into fractions. So I'm going to put a 1 underneath it, and I'm going to have 3 over 1 times 7/6. And I look, is there anything I can cancel? Yes, 3 and 6 can both be divided by 3, so that becomes 1 and that becomes 2. So that's going to become 1 times 7 is 7, and 1 times 2 is 2. So G is equal to 7/2. That's improper. I can turn that into a mixed number. That's going to be G equals 3 and 1/2. How do I check? I'm going to check by plugging it back in. It said 6/7 times G. What did we say G was? 3 1/2, which is 7/2. And we want to see if that's going to equal 3. So let's see, can I cancel anything? Yes, I can divide those both by 2, so that becomes 1 and that becomes 3. And I can also cross out those 7s, right? 7 and 7 can cross out and both become 1. So 3 times 1 is 3, 1 times 1 is 1, which just equals 3. So yes, 6/7 times 7/2 does equal 3. So that means G does have to be 7/2 or 3.5. So I was correct. Okay, I have 7/6 equals 1/3 K. So I'm going to go ahead and put that line down the middle, and I'm looking at the variable, and I have a fraction coefficient. And if I have my coefficient as a fraction, I know I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal. So I'm going to multiply both sides by 3/1. Okay, and I kind of wrote it to the side here, but I need to do that to both of them, both sides, right? Put a little dot to mean multiplication. Okay, I know that 1/3 times 3/1, those will cancel out, right? And I'm going to be left with K equals, and now I need to multiply that 3/7 times 1/6, and I look, is there anything I can cancel? Why, yes, there is. I can cancel the 3 and the 6. I can divide them both by 3, and that becomes 1 and 2. So what's 1 times 7? 7, and 1 times 2 is 2. So K equals 7/2. So what's 7/2? That's 3.5. So 3.5 is what K equals. So now I'm going to check it by plugging it back into the equation. I said that 1/3 times K would equal 7/6. So let's try that. 1/3 times, what did I say K was? 3.5, but I have to do it as an improper fraction to be able to multiply. So I'm going to put that 7/2 in there. And there's nothing I can cross cancel, so top times top, bottom times bottom. 7 times 1 is 7, and 3 times 2 is 6. That's exactly what we said it equaled, so we are correct. K is 3.5. So just to review, we know that anytime we have a fraction coefficient, to solve the problem, we will multiply by the reciprocal. So again, that means if I have a fraction, any fraction, as my coefficient, meaning the number being multiplied by the variable, I'm going to solve it by multiplying by the reciprocal, which means flipping that fraction. And I'll do that to both sides. And that's how you solve a one-step equation with a fraction coefficient.